Hi, my name's Rachel, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Mill Food Recycler. And to start, I've reviewed my fair share of these home composting units, but this one, the Mill, is quite different. For starters, they don't really advertise themselves at all at being a composting unit, but rather being a food recycling unit. They seem to understand that what their product is making are these dried food grounds. It's not actually making a soil or a dirt, which some other composting units do advertise their product as doing. And if at any point during this entire video you want to check out the Mill Food Recycler, I do have a link in the description of this video and you are welcome to visit it anytime. So let's dive into this review. I first want to walk you through the setup and how I used it, and then at the end I want to give my overall thoughts on how I feel about using it after it's been a few months, some of the pros and cons. So if you'd like to skip forward in this video to find out my final thoughts, you're more than welcome to do so. So to start with the setup, when I got this food recycler, it is quite large, but I was immediately notified by email, and as you bring it in, it is quite heavy. I had a little bit of a hard time bringing it in. Granted, I am expecting a baby, and so take that with a grain of salt. I'm kind of hindered at the moment. But the setup was actually really easy, considering that there are actually instructions on the box. There's a QR code on the box as well. You scan it and it walks you through the entire setup, how to open the box and how to get your machine set up and running. So all in all you had to do was remove the packaging, place the charcoal filter in, and then set it up in their app, which took a few minutes. Honestly, it was all really seamless, and normally I kind of hate having to have an extra app on my phone for just one appliance, but honestly, their app is very well made. I am constantly using it, and it is super helpful. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how this app exactly works. So once you first get into it, it's going to walk you through exactly how to set up your mill with super helpful visuals. And once you get it all set up, connected to your Wi-Fi, and you can even give it a name, you set its schedule, you allow notifications so that it can let your phone know when it's full. You are then led into the main app page where you can see your impact and how many pounds of scraps you have used. You can read helpful articles of what to do with your food grounds once you have started emptying it. And then my personal favorite is they have a whole food library where it will tell you what things can and should not go into your mill with extra details when you click on each one. And after I got it all set up with the app and everything, I did record my very first thoughts and impressions, and I thought it would be helpful to place that in here so you can see kind of what I was thinking in the very beginning before I actually tested out this product. Okay, so I just finished up setting up the mill, and obviously I need some time to test it out and gather my thoughts, but I did want to record just some things that I love about it. Just at the very beginning, some great first impressions. First thing, I love this magnet. With other similar bins that I've had, I am constantly having to go in through a drawer to find their little handbook and find out what is okay and isn't, just as I get used to it. So I really appreciate having a magnet in the beginning. And also the other thing that I'm really impressed with is their app. How they have a whole food library that you can go through and check out what foods are okay and which foods aren't, and read more about them. And I love that it just runs on its own. It weighs it. If it feels like there's a significant amount of weight, it will run it at the time that I set. And if there's not enough in there, it will wait till the next day and run then, and I can start it manually from my app. I just really like that. I think I'm someone who's kind of forgetful, so I'm really excited to see how that all plays out. I just wanted to capture my first few thoughts when opening this and setting it up. But next I need to see how it actually works, obviously, and see if I like the results that it gives. So I'm really excited to, start cooking, doing normal things around the house and filling this thing up and see how it goes. So from that point of setup, I started using the mill immediately. I am a mom, I have 3 littles, and there is a lot of food waste in our house. And so immediately I was filling up the bucket with scraps. I was checking the app to make sure I wasn't adding anything that shouldn't be added, of course. But it felt so nice to take those uneaten bits of food off of my kids' plate, and instead of just having to throw them away, I could put them right into the mill, and it wasn't stinking up my garbage can, which was a huge plus. So the way I set up my mill food recycler to run was at 10 p.m. every night. That way it wasn't bugging anyone or waking anyone up, and I could use it throughout the entire day. In the very beginning, I was a little confused on after it had run if I needed to remove the recycled bits of food that it had created or if I could keep adding to it. Turns out you just keep adding to it until it gets to the fill line. It will run each night with the existing recycled food and just keep running all together. But other than that one little piece of confusion, everything else was really easy to get a handle of it and make it part of our daily routine. And now, me in present time, now that I've been using it for a few months, here are my thoughts thus far. And I tried to cover the biggest pieces that I could think of that a consumer like you would be interested in knowing. So I want to address like the ease of use, the noise level, the energy consumption, the environmental impact, the cost, kid friendliness, things like that. And lastly, if I would actually recommend this product to a friend that I care about. So first thing I want to cover is ease of use. So far, I've been using my mill food recycler for just over a month, and I actually have not been able to empty it yet, which is astounding to me because I have added so much food to it. I think the last time I checked my app, I was at a total of 30 pounds of food being put into my mill food recycler. And like I said, I still have not emptied it. It's getting close to the line, but it's still not quite there. Other models that I have used and tested that do the same sort of thing, you have to remove it after every cycle. And I found it really tedious. This is just really seamless because I hardly have to think about my mill. I'm just adding food to it anytime I have food scraps, and when it is full, which again, it hasn't quite gotten there, the app will let me know that it's time to remove it, or I will visually see that it has gotten to that line and it's time for me to remove all those bits of recycled food. Another thing I've noticed is that this one I've had no problem with jams, like the machine jamming up. And again, with the other food recycling machines that I have used, I had trouble with them jamming, and maybe that was user error, but I promise that I have only been adding things that are okay to be adding to these units, and they would always jam on me. So far at the mill, after over a month, and I have tested it, it has not jammed. So for example, I wanted to test if it could jam. I was a little nervous to do so, but I added in 2 whole heads of broccoli that had gone bad. This is something I would have not added to the other units I have tested. But with this one, I just wanted to see how durable it was. And sure enough, in the morning, it was fine. It had not jammed. I couldn't even tell that the broccoli had been in there, and it had worked just fine. And I've done that multiple times. The other day, I put in a ton of zucchini, and it handled it no problem. So if you're worried about durability and how hardcore this thing is, it can handle a lot. Obviously, I'm not adding things that it says do not add. I'm adding things that are appropriate, but sometimes they're just big chunks of it, and it handles it so well. And I really appreciate that because there's been no extra care to this unit. Another thing, and I kind of mentioned this, my trash can doesn't get stinky anymore because there's no food waste in it. It's all in my mill. The mill closes shut and no odor escapes from it. Another thing I love is the filter that it comes with doesn't have to be changed for an entire year. Other units, it's like every few months that you have to change out that filter. It can get a little pricey. I will talk about that in a second when I go over cost. But I really love that, again, I just don't have to think about this machine. It just so nicely fits in my day-to-day and doesn't cause me any issues, or I don't have to be replacing anything or taking things out of it. Another point with ease of use is that it's hands-free. It has one of those little press pedals at the bottom that you see on many garbage cans. And so when I'm coming over with a whole tray of scraps of food or a cutting board with scraps of food, I press on the pedal, dump dump it in. I don't have to finagle, open a lid or anything like that. It just opens with the press of your foot. And as a mom where I'm constantly holding other things, I really do appreciate that part of its ease of use. Another bonus I want to touch on with its ease of use is that other food recycling units or composters, whatever you want to call them, because some of them advertise themselves as composters. You have to figure out all on your own what you are going to do with that recycled bit of food that you have created. One thing I love about the mill is they have this entire program where if you don't have anywhere to put your recycled material, they will actually take it for you. You can mail it to them, or they have some local programs where you can take it yourself, and farmers will use it. They'll use these grounds, this recycled food material, and feed their chickens with it. And I think that is so cool that they've set up a way for people who maybe don't have anywhere to put those grounds that they've created. And as for me personally, I actually do have chickens, so it's extra nice that I can take the grounds, that recycled material that I've created, and feed it straight to them and use it myself. That, or I can be tossing it into my garden beds, or to refresh the soil in spring, I can sprinkle it into my lawn. There's a lot of possibilities that I personally can use the grounds for. Moving on to noise level, this unit is very quiet. Like I said, I have it run at 10 p.m. I hardly notice it. It is much quieter than I would say your average dishwasher. In fact, when I looked it up, the mill clocks in around 42 decibels, where your average dishwashing machine is around 60 decibels. So just slightly below a dishwashing machine. It's very quiet. I don't hardly notice it. It does have a click when it locks, and that startles me, but that is the noisiest thing about it. It's not a big deal because, like I said, at 10 p.m., it's just me and my husband awake at that point in the day. Another point I want to cover is environmental impact, because I know that these food recycling units get so much heat in this area. There's a lot of debate on if they're actually environmentally friendly or if they're not. So to start, I just kind of want to talk about some facts. The FDA reports that food waste is one of the largest contributors to our landfills, and of that food waste that's coming in, the biggest contributor to that is actually homes. Us, your average Joes. And so recycling the food waste that is coming into our home to reduce the CO2 coming out of landfills is really worth our consideration. According to Project Drawdown, they actually have found that it is more effective for the environment for you to recycle the food waste in your home than it is to drive an electric car, take public transit, put solar on your house, or to have the entire country go vegan. That's a pretty astounding statement, but the food waste in our homes is actually a really big deal. About 58% of methane emissions from landfills are coming from our food waste. Now, obviously, the mill doesn't come without any CO2 emissions at all. There's shipping the grounds if you choose to send them to farmers. There's the production of the machine, but overall, the machine creates about 160 kilograms of CO2. But with this, it's actually avoiding around 688 kilograms of CO2 because your food won't be sitting in a landfill and creating those methane gases. Another thing I want to point out, the average American single person creates about 500 pounds of food waste every single year. So my family, there are currently 5 of us. So if we stick to that average, we are keeping 2,500 pounds of food waste out of landfills every single year by using the mill food recycler, which is some pretty astounding numbers. To me, that seems environmentally worth it, especially when the mill is not creating much of a CO2 footprint because I am using all of the grounds myself. I'm not shipping them back out to farmers, but even if you did choose to do that, what you are saving in those methane gases and CO2 emissions coming out from landfills from your food waste compared to you putting it into the mill food recycler, I think makes a huge environmental impact. And my next point is kind of on the cost side, but also on the environmental friendliness side. But on average, it uses 0.7 kilowatt hours of energy every single day if you're adding food scraps to it and it's running every day, which I am. And so for me in the state of Utah, that's going to cost me about 7.5 cents per day to run my mill. So not very expensive, not very much energy use being used there. The one time I did notice a difference was when I was making a ton of zucchini bread and grating up zucchini to freeze. It was from my garden. It's just the kind of the season that I'm in right now. And it actually ran a 10-hour cycle. Now, I have never seen it do that. It usually runs a much shorter cycle than that. Just know if you add a lot of really wet material, it's going to be a longer cycle. Otherwise, it is usually done in the morning time, and it has been done for a long time. I would say when I've caught the cycle running, it's usually anywhere from like 1 to 2 hours that it's running on average. And as far as kid friendliness goes, I've had no issues. I have kids ranging from 6 to 1 years old, and there have been no issues besides just, hey, don't press that button, it will start a cycle, and they've gotten used to it. It looks like a garbage can, so it doesn't draw their attention too much. They were definitely intrigued in the very beginning, but you can actually set it to have it locked all day if you want. I have it unlocked, and that way they can be adding in food scraps themselves, and then when it is running, it automatically locks itself. And because it's running at nighttime, I don't have any worries about them touching it while it's running, or ruining a cycle, or feeling any heat that the machine is creating. It's like not a worry at all with kids and using this machine. Okay, and the last thing is cost, which is a huge deal to a lot of people. It's a huge deal to me. And currently, the market value of the mill, they are selling them at $999. And yes, I know that that is quite expensive. The other food recycling or composting units that you see are quite a bit cheaper than that. Kind of depends on where you go. Honestly, I haven't seen anyone that is this good at this price point. Those other ones, I don't know if you can really compare the cost because they are so different. They sit on your tabletop. They aren't like a unit that resembles a trash can, right? And I mentioned that there is a cost to energy usage, but it's really small, about 10 cents or less a day. The other cost that comes with the mill is the charcoal filters. So that's probably about $60 every year. But when you look at the other machines that are out there where they are asking you to change them every 3 months, depending on how much you're using it, it can be anywhere from the $60 up to $240. They can get really expensive because you are changing them so often. So that is a huge win on the cost side of having the mill. And this is just me getting on my soapbox. But I really do wish, because these machines can have such a great environmental impact, I kind of hate that all of the cost relies on us to buy these units and help change the environment. I think most of us are passionate about our earth and saving it, but when it comes at such a high expense, it makes it hard. That's just my soapbox. I wish that there were like local programs that would incentivize people to use these food recycling units to make it more affordable so that we could make a huge environmental impact as average American households. But obviously that's not something that exists right now. And so the cost of you making an environmental impact is completely reliant on you and your grit to do it. Personally, I think it's worth it, but I know that not everyone will feel that way. But anyways, that's besides the point. After I've been using it, after I've seen what it can do, how much easier it has been for me to use, the question remains, would I actually recommend this to my friends, to my neighbors? And my answer is yes, I would. I know that the cost is high, but I love how environmentally friendly it is. When you get down to it, I love how easy it is to use. The other ones were a little bit harder to implement into my life, but this one has been so seamless that as a consumer, that means a lot to me, especially as a busy mom where I don't need something else in my life that's causing me trouble. This doesn't cause me any trouble. Honestly, it makes my life easier. It's going to be feeding my chickens and my garden and my lawn. And so for me, the cost is worth it. It's going to enhance my outdoor area. It's going to be feeding my chickens. For others of you who maybe don't have that option, I know that there are other local programs. You could take it to local community gardens. You could sprinkle it around local parks if you wanted to. But if you are someone like me, you do have a yard or a garden or chickens, chickens, it is so nice to take your food waste, make it into something useful, and use it back into your immediate environment. And you know that you are making a difference in the landfill emissions. It's very satisfying. But that concludes my thoughts on the Mill Food Recycler. I hope you found this helpful. I hope this helped you decide if it's something that you would like to have in your life, or maybe you'd like to use it down the road. Again, if you want to take a closer look at this machine, the link is down in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them. I try to answer most of them, but I hope that this was helpful, and thank you for watching.